Mariani Show, life as you've never heard it on Relevant Radio.
All right, 26 now before the top of the hour. Welcome back, everyone. It's good to be here with you today. From giving to the poor to super inheritance. How do I segue from that, huh? How do you do that? Interesting story. You know, we talk about first world problems, right? I honestly, this whole giving to the poor thing, it's something I hope you really will evaluate. I know many of you listening are very generous. You're supporters of Relevant Radio, and you're generous on a lot of different levels, and we're grateful for that. I want to talk about another issue here, and I don't know whether you have a lot of money, God's blessed you with capacity, or you don't. This might be out of the frame of reference for some people. It may just be the stuff of dreams for others. Melissa Rivers, I know many of you are watchers. She produces Fashion Police. She's the daughter, of course, of the late comedian Joan Rivers. Well, when her mom passed away, she left her a very, very sizable inheritance. And Melissa Rivers reported to have received, I think, $110 million from her mother. $110 million. That's a lot of money. The question is it prudent to give to your kids that type of money? Should some be dispersed to charities, to other organizations? Money of that capacity, that magnitude, could destroy a lot of families. Now, Melissa grew up with it, so she probably has a different way of handling it. I just know that people who won the lottery, you ever see these shows, like the lottery's ruined my life? People are bankrupt, their marriages are divorced. I know a man who won a lottery in Illinois, right? He ended up, his son ended up on drugs. His wife ended up leaving him for the tennis pro, and he ended up trying to commit suicide later in life. That's what money can do if you're not well formed. So the big question is, when it comes to leaving a large fortune behind, how will those who get it take care of it? Now, it's interesting because Bill Gates, the world's richest man, whose net worth is somewhere around, I think, $81 billion. You know what he's given to his kids? He's worth $81 billion. Bill Gates is going to leave his children, if you want to call this paltry, maybe not. To me, it's a lot of money, but he's going to leave his kids $10 million. That's it. $10 million in light of the $81 billion that he is worth. $10 million to me is a lot. It's in comparison to $81 billion, that's a minuscule amount compared to his fortune. But he plans to give the rest away to charitable organizations. Though I hope Bill doesn't make the mistake of giving to groups like Planned Parenthood and those types of groups, population control groups, et cetera. Gloria Vanderbilt, she's leaving nothing for her son. You know who Gloria Vanderbilt's son is? Interesting trivia question. You got it? Ready? He's on CNN. He's an anchor there. Anderson Cooper is Gloria Vanderbilt's son, or his mother. And, Cooper, I think, is making $11 million a year. So she's not leaving him any money. Warren Buffett, he's got three kids each. They each have a $2 billion foundation funded by their dad. One of the heirs of the Johnson & Johnson fortune said that he and his 5 siblings got $600 million each with no restrictions. And he made the very good observation that even though the kids, may not have the money, they still have access to the best schools, to very influential people. But a lot of parents put their kids' money into trust funds so they can't be touched until they're a certain age or, until certain things are met. So trying to control what kids do with that kind of money can be hard. Look at Paris Hilton and Ivanka Trump, who used her money to go to the Wharton, school and is now running her own business. So what should a parent do? It's kind of the question. What do you do if you have money? Maybe you're not worth hundreds of millions or even millions. Maybe you do have some assets. What do you do to make sure that your kids can benefit from them, but at the same time don't get hurt by them? You give them just enough to give them that safety net. What do you do? Joining me right now to take a look at this is Terry Herr. He is a certified financial planner and a managing partner of Herr Capital Management, located there in the great state of Illinois. You can check him out at hercapital.com. And it's great to have him join me today. Terry, thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Drew.
It's an interesting situation. I mean, I wouldn't mind having somebody who's worth $81 billion or several $1 million. I don't have that coming to me from anybody. I mean, that would be a wonderful surprise to find out somebody left me in their inheritance. But I feel I'm probably well-formed and would use that money properly, but maybe so does everybody else. Part of the problem is with money, like I mentioned the lottery example, how do you react, first of all, to these cases of these super wealthy, these uber wealthy people like Gates and Buffett and, who's the other one, Vanderbilt, et cetera, not really leaving a significant amount of money to their kids? Do you think that's a prudent thing to do, and instead they're allocating their money to other causes?
You know, what Bill Gates and some of these other individuals are doing are really, it is about forming their children. Now, I don't know exactly how they want to form their children, or I don't know them personally, but, Bill Gates is making a statement by only giving his children $10 million. Yeah. And what he's saying to them is, look, I'll take care of you, but I have a greater need to take care of society. And he's got a substantial amount going to different charities. But, transferring of the money through an estate plan or something like that is just a transaction. Mm-hmm. But really what we're transferring and what people should be focused on, and this is true whether you're wealthy or of more modest means, is your values and your entrepreneurial skills. And that's where we get into trouble with these lottery winners or any of these other individuals. When they go through all of that money, it fundamentally comes back to the question, are they well-formed and will they be good stewards of the money?
So what do you recommend to parents? Like, not everybody's worth, like I said, $80 billion or even, $100 billion. There are other people who might have a nice home worth, a couple $100,000 and their 401ks and, a couple other assets that maybe they have. What do you recommend to parents? Because here's another deal. Whether we're talking Uber inheritances or just regular inheritance. I know another couple. This mother and father had just a son and a daughter. And the daughter happened to live with the parents or be in the community of the parents for a very long time. They lived, I think, in the Connecticut area. And this father had moved away to another state. In the end, everything was always split right down the middle in this will. The parent went to split everything evenly. It didn't matter who had more. And what ended up happening is the father got older. He had other influences on him, and he became a little more feeble. And soon he wanted now to leave all of his money, his home, and everything just to the daughter. And the son felt incredibly ostracized. He felt hurt. It created division between brother and sister and father and son. The mother sided on with the boy, but because she could see this from a different vantage point. But, inheritance, too, if they're not allocated properly, they can cause a lot of division in people's lives, can't they?
Yeah, we see it quite often. I've had several cases this year, but 40%, I think PNC Wealth Management did a study that said 40% of our decision making around estate planning and our heirs comes from emotion and how we feel about a particular child, and most recently what happened. So what's happening in a case like that is the recency of the daughter taking care of dad made the father feel a little bit more engendered towards taking care of her. Yeah. Now, it maybe was a prudent move, perhaps not, but really the issue comes back to communication. Anything that deals with financial transactions in the family comes back to communication as to why, what the rationale is behind, and being open and honest about it. But it's one of the things very few of us ever really want to talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting because I said to my wife and to our children, I don't care how much we have. I don't care if my one son becomes, a brain surgeon and the other one, cuts grass for a living, and there's a disparity perhaps in their income. We're going to divide everything right down the middle, and I think it's fair. And everybody can, I'm sure, handle their finances the way that they want and what they think is fair. But that just avoids so much conflict. There's no, hey, this person loved you more, gave you more because of this. It's interesting, too, because we live at a time right now where we watch these baby boomers. I had read that they're poised now to give away about $30 trillion over the next 30 years. That's going to be the largest transfer of wealth in U.S. history. And let's talk about that. As the baby boom generation gets older, it starts dropping off. As we see this mega transfer of wealth, the largest in the history of the world, are we prepared for that, both as a society and as individuals? And what can we do right now if we are up in our twilight years to form our kids to make sure that this does not destroy them but blesses them? The Pope tweeted today, I think it was, that the family is where we are formed as people, and every family is a brick in the building of society. And when it comes to looking at this,
parents and grandparents are asking themselves, how do I pass this legacy on? How do I transfer these values? And sometimes that means splitting things equally. Sometimes that means splitting things less equally. The prodigal son comes to mind where, the dad was hurt because the son had abandoned him. He left, right. And then he celebrated his return. And as a Catholic, if we have conflict in our family, we can give our heirs a chance to sort of redeem themselves, and that can be done through a trust. That can be done. So if you have an issue with the child where maybe you want to disinherit them or think that they shouldn't get as much, there's mechanisms to sort of build in that healing process. And equal isn't always fair. Right. And I'm the youngest of 10 children, and we're all in a 10-year, 3-month span, and my father was an estate planning attorney, so we had many, many discussions about what would happen on his death. And given the size of my family, it went pretty smoothly, simply because there was a lot of discussion.
And Terry, that's important, though, isn't it? I mean, maybe parents and children at a certain age should sit down and talk about what they're doing and why they're doing that, rather than waiting for the person to die and somebody blows the dust off of the will, right?
It's critical, Drew, because we had a case recently in the last year where we have 4 siblings, and Dad was upset with the daughter, and upon his death, he had disinherited that daughter. And the children, none of the siblings don't talk to each other. There were lawsuits, and it was really over a very modest amount of money, relatively speaking. But because it wasn't something that was talked about, it wasn't something that people understood, and the kids were all, why did Dad do this? Didn't he know what was going to happen to us? Now on the flip side, we've had the exact opposite, where the parents have communicated with the kids, and there's so much appreciation and so much value to that. And I think, again, it always comes back to this communication, being open, being fair, not hiding it from our kids. And most of us aren't comfortable talking about our demise, so that makes it a little bit tougher conversation.
That's true. My guest today is Terry Herr. He's a certified financial planner and a managing partner of Herr Capital Management. You can check him out at hercapital.com. You got a caller question, I'll open the phones. I'll just take a couple. You can dial in now at 877-ROAM. 777. Maybe you've gone through this. Maybe you're in the process of going through it right now. Maybe you want to share your own story and experience. Feel free to dial in at 877-ROAM, 777. Terry, let me also ask you just about, and you might not have the answer for this, but I wonder how many people actually have money to leave to their kids, of significance. Does everybody have something? Is it a majority of people who leave inheritances, or a minority of people? How does that work out?
Well, everybody probably has something. An inheritance is really nothing more than, leaving your whatever you had, whether it's possessions that were important to you, money, a house, a car, that's all an inheritance. And so I think everybody, for the most part, has something that they're going to transfer to their kids. And there's lots of different ways to transfer those assets depending on the size of it. When you have more money, it just gets a little bit more complicated because you can do more. Money's sort of a tool, and the more you have, the more you can use, and the more you can pass on to charities, or the more you can pass on to your family.
Well, it sounds good. It's 13 minutes before the top of the hour. Let me take a short break. When we come back, we'll grab a call or two. Our toll-free number, 877-ROAM, 777. We're talking inheritance. When should you give it early? Should you wait till you die? And what was your experience like? Like I said, I know that one couple where the family was terribly divided because the father wanted to give all the inheritance to the one child and not to the other. And then I think of the scriptures of the prodigal son, where the father gave his inheritance early. The son, squandered it, but he came back, and still the father threw that party for him. We'll take your stories, take your comments, your questions, and calls right after this. Stay with me.
Substance without the static. You're listening to the Drew Mariani Show on Relevant Radio.
All right, 10 before the top of the hour, Melissa Rivers, daughter of the late comedian Joan Rivers, receiving over $110 million from her mother. Of course, Bill Gates, worth about $81 billion, one of the richest men in the world. He's not leaving his kids a whole lot of money in comparison to his his wealth, he's going to give his kids $10 million. For many of us, that's like a lottery. But when you're worth $81 billion, that's a different story. Gloria Vanderbilt, Anderson Cooper's mother, not going to leave him anything. Warren Buffett set up foundations for his kids. We're talking about inheritances. What to do with them, whether or not it's wise to give your kids that much money if you have that type of capacity, and whether it's even fair to give more to one child than the other. If the child has a greater need, should you give that child more? I know it's a personal thing and it comes down to all of you. Or do you split it right down the middle? Have you seen what the death of a loved one and what money has done? It has ripped families apart. I'm joined today by Terry Herr, and he is a certified financial planner, and he joins us from Herr Capital Management. Check him out at hercapital.com. And Terry, let's go to the phones. We'll go to Anonymous listening to us in Wisconsin. They're first up. Hi, Anonymous.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm just wondering, my husband and I are both 66 in very good health at this time. I'm wondering, when should you talk to my two children, and should we tell them what we have and what we intend to do with it?
Sure. It's never too early to talk to your children. In fact, I think with our clients, a lot of times it's a progression where the first thing to do is to sit down with you and your husband, determine what your values are, what you want your legacy to be. And then, and that's sort of the intent piece. And then you go to the second piece, which is the technique and what are the types of things and documents we need to put in place. And you may want to talk to your children before you start to put documents together just to see how they feel about it. And so typically we see this as a progression over the course of time, but it's always important to discuss your values and your intent and what you'd like to have happen, because none of us know the day or the hour in which we'll depart. So I think it's important to start very early.
All right, well said. Anonymous, thanks. Thank you for the call. We go to Debbie in Decatur, Illinois. Debbie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My situation is kind of difficult and hard, I think. We made a will out when our children were very, very small, and now they're all grown. But here's my dilemma. I have a disabled daughter who lives in a group home, and the thing is, if I leave her money, which we're not wealthy, that's for sure, but if I leave her too much money, her assets would only be $2,000. If I split it equally, then she would get knocked out of her group home and her funding and all that until she used up her money, and then she would have to reapply. If I don't leave her money because she's adopted, the state can come after us and say, hey, you're not treating your kids fairly. And they can do something about that too. And so it is hard for us to go back and readjust our will that was made out many years ago because of all of this. We don't know what to do with it.
Sure. Debbie, I don't know that I can answer all of the complexities of your question, and I'd be happy to talk to you maybe offline to get some more facts, but one of the areas that you want to investigate is a special needs trust, in working with somebody who specializes with special needs. There are ways in which you can split the estate or split the assets equally and provide for the care of your child, while at the same time not hurting the benefits that she gets from the state. But it's a very specialized area. We work with several attorneys that have some specialty in that area. So there are some things that you can do, but it can't be done with a will. It's typically going to be done through a trust. Yeah. So there is hope.
So if the will is set up for her a trust, can other changes be made to the will, or can they not?
Well, your will can be changed at any time, and can your trust. Now, I'm not an attorney, so we don't draft that, but we do work a lot with attorneys in reviewing these documents. So you can change those things, but in order to provide for a special needs child, it will require a trust.
Okay.
And it's a very nuanced area that I don't think I could do justice.
And Debbie, she should probably go and talk to a certified financial planner of some sort who could probably help her work out her particular situation, right?
Yeah, and I think the key question there is to ask if they have specialty or have experience with special needs.
Right. All right. Well said. Debbie, thanks. Thanks for the call.
All right. Thanks so much.
Sure, Debbie. Thanks.
Terry, let me get some final thoughts for you. To those who are listening, what would you say is important to maybe leave them with regarding this issue?
Yeah, I think that really when it comes to the estate planning and leaving an inheritance, it comes back towards intent over technique. And a lot of times when you sit down with an advisor, they focus on the technique, which is we can save you so much in taxes, or you can do this, or you could do that. But they don't really get to the heart of the matter, which is the values. What's the legacy? What's the intent? What do you want your children to learn and carry forward from this? And I think the estate plan and the inheritance process can do that very effectively. And that's effectively what Warren Buffett is doing. That's what Bill Gates is doing. And, you know, theirs is more complicated because they have more money. But it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can still do and transfer these values. And I think that that's critically important for people to understand, that it's not the size of the wallet, it's sort of what you do with the wallet. And we all have that opportunity to use our money as a tool for good in the world. And so I think that that's important to understand what the intent is. What do you want to have happen, and how do we make sure that we transfer these values to our kids? And it involves a lot of communication, and it involves a lot of thinking on your part as to what's important to you.
That's for sure. Well, hey, I want to thank you, Terry, for your help and all your insight. Appreciate you joining me today. People can contact you, I guess, at hercapital.com. Best place to get more info, right?
Yep, that'd be great.
Terry, thanks. Keep up
My
your
pleasure.
good work. God bless you, sir.
Same to you. Thanks, Drew.
Terry Herr, folks. Grateful for him. We're now 3 minutes before the top of the hour. We'll pray the chaplet at that particular moment in time. Something to pray about. Again, I've seen finances destroy families, tear them apart, and that's the last thing I think you ever want to do. And it's interesting. We live in an era of Pope Francis where there's this great detachment from things of the world. I don't think there's anything wrong with money or having it. But I think we have to be well-formed. We have to have a proper understanding of it. I think you also have to make sure that your kids also have that understanding, because you've seen a lot of trust